Welcome to Diverse Cymru's Hustings event, A Fair and Equal Wales. We have 4 candidates for the Senedd election with us. We will hear from each of the candidates in alphabetical order of first names for 5 minutes on what they will do to achieve a fair and equal Wales for all. Then we will ask all the candidates some questions. Candidates will speak in Welsh and English. All contributions in Welsh will also be said in English. We have British Sign Language interpreters with us today. All speeches and questions will be translated into British Sign Language. We would like to welcome Elin Walker-Jones, Plaid Cymru candidate for Clwyd West and 3rd on the North Wales regional list. Lina Farhad, Welsh Liberal Democrat candidate for Clwyd South. Megan Lloyd, Wales Green Party first candidate on the South Wales West regional list. And Ruba Sivinyanam, Welsh Labour candidate for South Wales Central. There is a separate video with Mia Rees, Conservative candidate for Cynon Valley and South Wales Central regional list. We hope you enjoy this event. We will be starting with Elin Walker-Jones.
Croeso i ddigwyddiad Hustings Diverse Cymru. Cymru deg a chydraf. Mae gennym 4 ymgeisydd ar gyfer etholiad y Senedd gyda ni. Byddwn nhw'n clywed a gan bob un o'r ymgeiswyr yn nhrefn yr wyddor enwau cyntaf am 5 munud ar yr hyn y byddant yn ei wneud i sicrhau Cymru teg a chydraf i bawb. Yna byddwn nhw'n gofyn rhai cwestiynau i'r holl ymgeiswyr. Bydd ymgeiswyr yn medru siarad yn Gymraeg a Saesneg. Bydd yr holl gyfraniadau yn Gymraeg hefyd yn cael ei ddweud yn Saesneg. Mae gennym dehonglwyr BSL gyda ni heddiw. Bydd yr holl areithiau a chwestiynau yn cael eu cyfieithu i iaith arwyddion Prydain. Felly hoffem groesawu Elin Walker-Jones, Plaid Cymru, ymgeisydd Gorllewin Clwyd a trydydd ar restr rhanbarthol Gogledd Cymru. Lina Farhad, ymgeisydd y Democratiaid Rhyddfrydol ar gyfer De Clwyd. Megan Lloyd, y Blaid Werdd, prif ymgeisydd restr rhanbarthol Gorllewin De Cymru. Ruba Sivinyanam, ymgeisydd llafur ar gyfer Canol De Cymru. Mae fideo ar wahân gyda Mia Rees, ymgeisydd y Cedwadwyr ar gyfer Cwm Cynon a rhestr rhanbarthol Canol De Cymru. Gobeithio ewnech chi fwynhau'r digwyddiad hwn. A Elin Walker-Jones, os gwelwch yn dda, allwn ni ddechrau gyda chi.
Diolch yn fawr Non ac Eli wrth gwrs. Wel, Elin Walker-Jones ydw i, a dwi'n sefyll dros Blaid Cymru yn etholaeth Gorllewin Clwyd. Mae Plaid Cymru yn credu mewn Cymru sy'n genedl gyfartal a sy'n genedl o bobl cyfartal. Rydym yn genedl gyfartal ar holl genhedloedd eraill ar draws y byd, ac rydym hefyd yn genedl o bobl cyfartal yn credu mewn cymdeithas lle mae gan bob dinesydd o Gymru hawliau i gael eu trin yn gyfartal, pa beth bynnag yw un nodweddion personol neu i amgylchiadau cymdeithasol. Gan godi o lwch oer Covid-19 a'r cyfnodau clo erchyll yna, Plaid Cymru fydd y ffenix fydd yn gweld Cymru yn ymddangos fel cenedl hyderus yn gwbl alluog i ddatrys ei phroblemau ei hunain, beth bynnag fydd yn digwydd yn y dyfodol. Fel seicolegydd yn gweithio'r gwasanaeth iechyd, yn gweithio efo plant a phobl ifanc ag anableddau dysgu, awtistiaeth a'i teuluodd, wi wedi gweld drosto fi fy hun yr angyfartaledd a'r angyfiawnder a'r clodi sy'n gwasgu ein teuluodd mwyaf bregus. Dwi'n credu gall pethau fod yn well na hyn, gallwn ni wneud yn well na hyn. Rydym yn gwybod ers amser hir fod anghyfaltaredd cymdeithasol yn arwain at broblemau cymdeithasol fel digartrefedd, trosedd, trais, defnydd cyffuriau a chynnydd mewn problemau iechyd meddwl, ac yn y blaen. Felly, does dim esgus am y ffaith ein bod yn cario ymlaen i gosbi a chau allan y bobl mwyaf bregus yn ein cymunedau. Byddwn ni yn Plaid Cymru yn newid y llwybr hyn. Rydym wedi ymrwymo i gael gwared o glodi. Enghraifft, ni ddylai'r un plentyn fod yn llwgu. Rydym wedi ymrwymo i wneud yn siŵr y bydd pob plentyn ysgol gynradd yn cael cinio am ddim. Ac mae angen cyfleoedd a gobaith am ddyfodol disglair ar bobl ifanc. Felly rydym yn gwarantu gwaith neu hyfforddiant i bob person ifanc o 16 i 24 oed. Ac mae angen help ar ein teuluodd i lefelu fyny fe wnawn ni gefnogi ein teuluodd sy'n byw o dan y linell glodi drwy ddarparu taliad o 35 punt yr wythnos ar gyfer pob plentyn. A dyna jyst blas bach o rai o'n polisïau uchelgeisiol. Ar ôl degawdau o cronyism Toriaid San Steffan yn chwalu ein cymunedau, ar ôl 2 ddegawd o lafur Cymru yn ddi-liw, yn ddi-fflach yn tîn droi mewn harbwr gwag, mae gan Plaid Cymru gynllun uchelgeisiol, llwybr llachar i'n harwen ar draws y môr agored i wlad yr Iddewig newydd. Ond fydd i ddim yn rhwydd, bydd angen dyfal barhad a brwdfrydedd a gwaith caled i rannu a chynnal ein gweledigaeth o genedl gyfartal a chenedl o bobl cyfartal. Felly, ar fai y chweched, pleidleisiwch o Blaid Cymru, pleidleisiwch dros Blaid Cymru. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Non and Ellie. And thank you, BSL interpreters, Lydia, thank you very much. My name's Ellie Walker-Jones, and I'm standing on behalf of Plaid Cymru in Clwyd West. Plaid Cymru believes in a Wales that is an equal nation and a nation of equals. We are an equal nation with all the other nations of the world, and we are also a nation of equals in that we believe that every citizen of Wales should be treated equitably and fairly, whoever they are, whatever their personal characteristics or social circumstances. Rising from the ashes of COVID-19 and those punishing lockdowns, Plaid Cymru will be the phoenix that sees Wales emerge as a confident nation, capable of solving her own problems, whatever the future brings. Working as an NHS psychologist all my life with children with learning disabilities and autism and their families, I've seen firsthand the inequality, injustice and poverty that face our most vulnerable families. And I believe that this is not as good as it gets. We can do better than this. We have known for a long time that social inequality breeds social problems of all sorts: homelessness, crime, abuse, drug abuse, increases in mental health problems, and so on. So there really is no excuse in the 21st century for us to continue down this path of punishing and excluding the most vulnerable citizens in our communities. We in Plaid Cymru will change this course. We are committed to eradicating poverty. For example, no child should go hungry. We are committed to making sure that every primary school child should get free school meals. And our young people need opportunities and hope for the future, so we will guarantee a job or training for all 16 to 24-year-olds. And all our families need help to level up. We will support families living below the poverty line with a weekly top-up payment per child of £35. And that's just a few of our ambitious policies. After decades of Westminster Tory cronyism decimating our communities, after 2 decades of Welsh Labour rudderless and chasing its own tail in an empty harbour, Plaid Cymru has an ambitious plan, a course of action to take us through the open seas to a new land of promise. And it won't be easy. We will need to redouble our efforts to share and sustain this vision of an equal nation and a nation of equals. So on May the 6th, vote for Wales. Vote Plaid Cymru. Diolch.
Thank you. Lena Farhat, would you like to go next?
Sure, wel, diolch yn fawr iawn, a croeso i Hustings. Mae Democratiaid Rhyfeddol Cymru yw plaid a ffydd yn roi a ffurfio yn blaenoriaeth. Rydym mae grosffordd hanesyddol gan yw bod yn creu gallwn nid yn unig wella o'r chydig flynyddoedd diwethaf hyn, ond hefyd creu cynyddol fyneus o Chymru. Mae angen adfeiriad economi teg arnom i helpu ein stryd mawr a canol trefi a ddinesoedd a chefnogi busnesau bach i ffynnu a addysu. Byddwn yn cefnogi cymunedau wella a fyny. Byddwn yn busnodi mewn cysylltiad digital ac i creu lleolaeth hygyrch a croesogar yn cefnogi swyddi busnesau a weithwyr. Mae angen adfeiriad gwyrdd arnom a gwneud popeth ein gallu i amddiffyn ein planet ag eithaf cynhaliadau dyfodol ac wrth wneud hynny, beth o'n yn ysnogi i hyffeiriad economaidd. Mae angen adfeiriad goffalgar arnom. Bwythym i darpau goffal iechyd meddwl ar a gwffwr round the clock. Mae'n iechyd meddwl yn llais wedi ddioddef. Bydd yn creu Cymru mwy goffalgar trwy yn ein goffalwr a chadw pobl yn iach. Byddwn yn adeiladu cymdeithas gwella bwyedau miliynau gan helpu pobl i wella ar ôl trauma flwyddyn diwethaf. Rydym yn creu mewn cymdeithas lle mae'r hawliau a ryddeg yn cael i'w gwarchod. Bydd Democratiaid Rhyfeddol Cymru i gwneud trafnidiaeth cyhoeddus hygyrch effeithiol a gwyrdd yn blaenoriaeth, yn ysgydol a sicrhau bod lleafrifoedd yn cael i'w gwarchod a cefnogi yn popeth yn iawn. Ein blaenoriaeth yw eich blaenoriaeth. Byddwn yn adeiladau Cymru teg a gyfartal gan roi adfeiriad yn economi a iechyd a lles a'n planet yn gyntaf. So thank you for coming to the Hustings. The Welsh Liberal Democrats are the party who will put recovery first. We are at a historical crossroads as we believe that we cannot only recover from these difficult past few years, but also create a thriving Welsh nation. We support a fair economic recovery to help our high streets and towns and city centres and support small businesses to thrive and adapt. We will support communities to recover and to thrive, and we will invest in digital connectivity and create accessible, welcoming places that support jobs, businesses, and workers. We will create a green recovery and do everything in our power to protect our planet for future generations, and in so doing, we will stimulate our own economic recovery. We need a caring recovery. We will provide round-the-clock crisis mental health care. Our mental health and well-being has suffered. We'll create a more caring Wales by investing in our carers and keeping people well. We will create a caring society and improve the lives of millions by helping people recover from the trauma of the last year. We believe in a society where rights and liberties are protected. Welsh Liberal Democrats will make accessible, efficient and green public transport a priority, as well as ensure minorities are protected and supported in all that we do. Our priorities are your priorities. We will build a fair and equal Wales, putting the recovery of our economy, health and well-being and our planet first.
I tend to speak very quickly, so if you need to get me to slow down, please just give me a wave. I am the Green Party candidate for Neath and the lead list candidate for South West Wales for the upcoming Senedd elections. I would like to express my genuine delight to see such a well-represented panel today. You know, it's great to see women at the forefront of politics. Sorry. So I have no doubt that the most important thing the Senedd needs to do in the next 5 years is address the climate crisis. It is simply put the most pressing issue, not just Wales, but the world is facing. It's not enough just to declare a climate emergency. We need to take real action now. The Senedd needs to be able to access funds to further create clean, green energy supporters and jobs to sustain them. The Senedd also needs to focus on housing. Far too many of the people of Wales live in housing uncertainty due to out of control rents and a truly criminal lack of affordable housing. The Green Party have affordable housing at the top of our green transformation pledges, funded by a green transformation fund, to ensure not one person in Wales is left without a warm, safe home. Society flourishes when everybody has a safe base from which to contribute. If elected, I would push for regular and free buses for South West Wales on a hop-on, hop-off system, while also working within the Senedd to improve and maintain regular train links across South West Wales. The environment is struggling, as are people's pockets. Free and accessible public transport is the logical solution to both of these issues. I would work to end homelessness and home uncertainty by fighting to uphold the Green Party promises to build 12,000 new homes every year. Housing is a human right, and Wales is more than capable of providing homes to all. The Green Party have launched an ambitious manifesto with our 5 green transformation pledges, but also to protect people and the environment, while also looking at a more localized level of government. We believe in bringing democracy to the people, to the most base level that we can achieve. We would support local creatives to gain access to closed and disused shops and premises on our high street, with UBI as a basic support for many new small businesses and ventures to return life to our communities across Wales. The current situation is simply not good enough. We have to reform our high street and bring communities back together after this especially trying few years. Thank you very much. And also, it was so wonderful to hear, Ellen and Leanna, your Welsh was beautiful. I'm disappointed that I can't match you.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Yes. Hello, I'm Ruba Sivanyanam. I'm the lead list candidate for Welsh Labour in South Wales Central. I joined the Labour Party almost 30 years ago now because of its history of campaigning for equality and fairness for everyone. These are core values which are even more important today. Whether you live in the Rhondda, Ponty or Cardiff, the Labour Party cares about making Wales a fairer place for all of you. And this has shaped how Welsh Labour have governed in Wales, whether it's introducing the Disabled People's Employment Champions, sponsoring Pride Cymru, or introducing the All Wales COVID-19 Workforce Risk Assessment Tool for Black and minority ethnic communities. Labour in Wales cares about all of its people. And this year has been challenging. On the back of austerity, we have COVID-19. This terrible year has demonstrated how effective the people of Wales are when we work together. And amidst the enduring sadness of loss of jobs, of lives, and its devastation, it is also the stark inequalities have also been highlighted in our society. A virus which was meant to affect everybody equally has had a higher impact on Black and minority ethnic communities. Equality in all its forms is a work in progress. This year also brought into sharp focus race and gender inequality through the Black Lives Matter and Me Too movements and the murders of Sarah Everard, Nicole Smallman and her sister Biba Henry. They have highlighted the pressing need for change. And it's a challenge that Welsh Labour has taken up and pledges, and I pledge here today, to continue if re-elected. We will implement the new school curriculum, which will ensure LGBTQ+ inclusive education and ensure history and culture of Black and minority ethnic communities is on the curriculum and taught. We pledge to strengthen the violence against women, domestic violence and abuse strategy to include a focus on street and workplace violence. And we pledge to incorporate the UN Convention on the Rights of the Disabled People into Welsh law. Because it is a time for change and it's an opportunity to change. Thank you.
So we're moving on to questions now. So the theme of this event is a fair and equal Wales for all. There are many different communities and groups affected by inequality and who face discrimination in Wales. What will you do to make sure that the voices of all these different groups and communities are represented and the issues they face are addressed? We start on this question with Ellen and then go to Lena, then Megan, then Ruba.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for the question, Ellie. Well, what would I do? What would Plaid Cymru do? Plaid Cymru are committed to ensuring human rights and equality for all in Welsh law, policy and action. And we absolutely, one of the reasons I'm a Plaid member and have been all my life is because we always have believed in a fair and just society where everyone is treated equally and enjoys the same rights and opportunities. We have lots of plans. One of the things is a cabinet level post of Minister for Equalities and Women's Empowerment, an Autism Act, making sure that health and care services are available and free at the point of need for everybody. A written Charter of Citizens' Rights and Responsibilities. But I also accept that we're not going to get everything right all of the time. And that means that we need to listen to people. We need to listen. And I really like the idea of having citizens' assemblies. I think I've been listening to all of you talking and I've really enjoyed hearing your pledges. And what strikes me enormously is how similar our goals are, how similar we are, our recognition of the needs of the people of Wales. And I think that the only way forward, we would be indefeatable if we worked together to make sure that this Wales of ours is equal, is fair. And having worked all of my life as an NHS psychologist, working with children with disabilities and autism, and young people with diversity, neurodiversity issues, I'm painfully aware of how inequitable our society is, and it really is not on, and it needs to change at all sorts of different levels. So please pull me up if I say things that aren't appropriate, or if I, if I offend people without thinking or without meaning to. Please pull me up, because I need to hear that and I need to listen. And one of the things that we need to be doing at ground level is having unconscious bias training, so that, because all of us have unconscious biases, and the only way to overcome that is to be humble. I'll stop there. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Lena.
Thank you. Well, what will the Welsh Dems do here in Wales? Well, there's so many, it's a broad question. So let me just start by some of the, I would say, interesting parts of what we plan to do. We would like to establish a commission to investigate what services in Wales can do to prevent violence and discrimination against women and girls, and to support victims of abuse. We also want to take active action against hate crime and race inequality in Wales through measures dealing with workplace inequality, access to services, as well as the way that we do data monitoring. That's something that I know a lot about. I come from a tech background, and it's something that I'm quite interested in. We also want to ensure and resist the draconian and dangerous attempts to subject marginalised communities to even more disproportionate policing, and curb our right to protest, because I know all too well what some of us face. And we want to ensure that we are working with the UK government to extend the explain or reform principle to the 12 competencies that play a role in racial disparities in the criminal justice system, but other parts of our system, such as health, as well as improve data and data around disabilities, and data around LGBT plus hate crimes and that sort of thing. That's something that we don't have to ensure that data is accessible and that we are transparent about what we are doing. And I'm so glad to hear Ellen speak so complimentary. I completely agree with the unconscious bias training, and especially in these times and what we're seeing in our politics, leaders need to start at home. So I really hope that Ellen takes that back to her party, and that we do see a change in the way that we conduct ourselves.
Thank you. Megan?
So one of the reasons that I joined the Green Party and agreed to run for them as a candidate is because they are incredibly supportive on a personal level. I'm a neurodiverse candidate and a member of the LGBTQIA+, and I have never felt in any way lesser or anything other than totally supported within my party. Our manifesto focuses incredibly heavily on equality, diversity and inclusion. We would ensure that the needs of all people in our society are proofed across the service delivery through an improved, robust remit for the Minister of Equality, if elected. From younger people to older people, from sexual and gender inequality to religious equality, equality for people with physical and sensory impairments, mental health issues, and people like myself who are neurodiverse, and embracing all our ethnic, religious and social groups in Wales. One of the wonderful things about Cymru is how accepting and open we are. As long as you support the Welsh rugby team, you're down by me. So we would also commit to strategic long-term investment to community organisations to tackle inequality, poverty and discrimination against deaf and disabled persons and people with sight loss, including funding to expand advice, advocacy provisions and hate crime support service. Something that's particularly close to my, very close to my own heart is the Green Party's pledge to develop and implement a Wales-wide strategy to tackle gender-based violence, including domestic violence and sexual abuse. This will include providing education across Wales on violence against women and girls to increase awareness. So I'll end there, but also Ellen, yes, very interested to hear about your confirmation bias training.
Thank you. And Ruba.
So, you know, we Welsh Labour have been in government for the last 20 years, and I believe that we have gone some way to try to implement a fairer society for Wales. You know, whether it's through, you know, the Future Generations and Wellbeing Act. You know, we've put equality at the heart of all that we do here in Wales. But I suppose the question really reminds me of a quote from Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, when he tells his children, in order to understand somebody, you have to walk around in their shoes for a bit. You have to really get inside and walk around in their shoes to understand where they're coming from. And I think that's an essential part of ensuring that you know, that people feel represented in government. And again, the Welsh, you know, we have already set up the race equality strategy to make Wales an anti-racist society, and part of that is to talk to academics, to organisations working within communities, but to talk to people themselves to find out what, you know, what they expect of elected members, what they expect of their government, and that's critical to understanding how we better represent people. Sorry, I didn't understand that. 1 minute. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I think I've had my time, I think that meant.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll move to the second question. And for this one, we'll answer in the order Lena, Megan, Ruba, Ellen. And this question is, what will you do to make sure that British Sign Language is officially recognised, that all public services are available in British Sign Language, and to make sure that deaf people in Wales get fair and equal treatment? So if we start with Lena on this question.
Thank you. So I was talking about this to one of my other candidates the other day who's learning British Sign Language. And I think that from a Welsh Lib Dem standpoint, we absolutely want to make sure that people don't face barriers they should not have to face. I think that there needs to be infrastructure within our public services to have British Sign Language or British Sign Language interpretation more readily available. But I also think that it needs to be a core part of how we move forward in this recovery. We need to ensure that not just British Sign Language, but ensuring that any needs and any events, any work that we do under the Welsh Government banner is accessible to all. And if we start with our changes at home within the Welsh Government, which is something the Liberal Democrats will do, that needs to filter down into public services, into work that we do within education, as well as in our daily lives. We need to ensure that we are normalising and ensuring people don't find this hard to be able to navigate their life, no matter what disability they may have.
Thank you. Megan?
This again is an issue quite close to me personally, as I have partial hearing and I am learning BSL. I won't disgrace myself by trying to practice it yet. I'm still very much at the beginning stages. And I slightly answered this question in my previous answer. One of our manifesto pledges is strategic and long-term investment on a community level to tackle inequality against deaf and partially people with partial hearing. And we would, ideally try to bring BSL into the curriculum at a far more accessible level from a young age, and make BSL courses far more accessible to adults. It's incredibly important to me personally and to a lot of the Green Party that deaf people are included in the community in a way that we have slightly been failing them. So yeah, that's
Thank you. And Ruba?
So how do deaf people get fair and equal treatment in society? We need to work with the deaf community to see what the barriers are to making that possible, and why that hasn't happened now, and how we make that possible. Before this event, I was talking to Non, and we were discussing the fact there are only 20 BSL interpreters in the whole of Wales, which to me seems quite extraordinary. So this makes it, an expensive tool, if you like, and we need to be able to encourage people to learn BSL like we learn French or German and Welsh. So so it has to be an integral part of our community and education. So my first step would be to listen and to work with the community to look at the barriers and to then get rid of those barriers.
Thank you. And Elin?
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr am y cwestiwn. Okay, one of our manifesto pledges is to work with blind, partially sighted and deaf people and those experiencing hearing loss and the organisations that represent them and professionals to develop national strategies to ensure a coordinated and equitable access to services. Okay, that's great. That's the pledge. I've also mentioned the cabinet member for equalities, which is also important. Recently, funnily enough, I was invited to be a member of the DDN section, or group as it is at the moment, but the plans is for it to become a section. It stands for Deaf, Disability and Neurodiverse section of Plaid Cymru. And okay, the three communities there are brought together, very different needs, but the three communities that are really happy to work together because of the civil liberties issue and the issues around the social model of disability and the difficulties that they face. And you can imagine I'm delighted to be a member of that group. Again, it's good experience for me to be present when somebody is practicing BSL, and I'm sorry, I don't understand it, but I do understand Makaton, and I know they're very different. I'm aware of that. So yes, absolutely, I would work to the utmost of my ability to make sure that BSL is recognised as an official language and is used and taught in schools. And I recognise that being deaf is not a disability, it's simply an alternative way of viewing the world, of hearing the world, or being present in the world. Diolch.
Thank you. So for the third question, we'll go in the order Lena, Ruba, Megan, Elin, Megan, and this is, how will you make sure engagement and co-production involves all people who face inequality and discrimination in Wales, and that you act on their views and experiences?
Well, diolch. I mean, I started last time, but I don't mind starting again. So I think that the most important bit, which I can't remember who referred to it, but we need to listen to people, because we can't treat people who are going through inequalities and just tar everyone with the same brush, because people are going through inequalities for a range of reasons, and it's not just one group of people. I think that within where my party is coming from, many of our manifesto pledges in this sort of arena, because of our focus on recovery here in Wales, have focused on health and social care, and establishing a workforce, a task force around there, to be able to listen to people and get from their experiences how we can fix our current systems and make them work for as many people in Wales as possible, not just as many, but everyone, because we are making headway, but we're not doing it fast enough, and it could go faster. And as I said, we're at a crossroads at the moment where we have the chance to recover, so we may as well put all of it into listening to people to build back the way that we want to see our Wales.
Ellie, would you mind repeating the question? Because I didn't catch you kind of disappeared on the end of that question for me.
Sorry. How will you make sure engagement and co-production involves all people who face inequality and discrimination in Wales, and that you act on their views and experiences?
Brilliant, thank you. So I would reiterate what I've said already. It's really important to walk around in other people's shoes and to listen to what people are saying about the barriers they face in society, which means that they are discriminated against or disadvantaged. We have in government, we've demonstrated, again through the race equality strategy, which has worked, as I said, with academics, with communities, and with other professionals, to create a strategy, and it's our pledge that we will act on that strategy. So we will implement what needs to be implemented in order to make that work for in this case Black and minority ethnic communities, and that goes throughout. So again, implementing the UN Convention for Disabled People into Welsh law will be taking disability rights further forward. So the key to all of this is engagement. And how to do it, the most effective engagement is to talk and to listen to people. And you can do that in many different ways. What COVID has demonstrated to us is that we don't have to turn up to meetings. We can do lots of things digitally, and that will reach more people. And again, we have committed to ensure that people do have access to broadband, do have access in poorer communities to laptops and so on. So this is a huge time for us to make some real changes in our society, and barriers should be falling down left, right and centre now. Thank you.
Megan?
Oh, sorry. I think we're all going to be largely on the same page on this. We need to improve representation and make representation accessible. The Green Party will advocate citizens' assemblies, and just opening up the space and making it easier to access whatever party you want to, whatever political party you want to access. So to echo Ruba, part of something that we've all had to learn to adapt to is constantly being on Zoom meetings. We don't need to go into the office, and it is absolutely integral that we have a digital broadband revolution across Wales, so that people in mid Wales aren't desperately struggling to have the same access to to be able to contact people as people in the south or people in some of our major cities. And we would also, as I said before, bring in a stronger role for the Minister of Equality and make that role more accessible to the public so that people can voice their grievances, concerns. Thank you.
And Ellen.
Diolch. Yes, I think I'm going to be saying very similar things to all my colleagues here, certainly Minister for Equalities, and also bringing the Equality Act to a Welsh government forum is something we need to do. We can talk about what we need to do at government level. We need to have a 50-50 gender balanced Senedd, increasing representation of people of colour, LGBTQ+, disability, the people with disabilities, working class women. We also need to get better proportional representation and change our electoral system. We are talking about implementing the recommendations of an expert panel on Assembly electoral reform. But there's also things that we need to do at in workplaces and also in educational settings. We need to make sure that our children and young people discuss and understand diversity issues and engage and realise that, I mean, the fact that we are that we have invited our 16 to 17-year-olds to vote for the first time is a great way of engaging them and getting them involved in politics and realising that their voices need to be heard. And we need, I've mentioned the unconscious bias before. What else? Loads of things, sorry. We need to make sure that workplaces are non-discriminatory. We need to make sure that our public services don't discriminate against people with different needs and diverse issues. And we need citizens' assemblies so that all this is fed back, and we need to listen to everybody. Yeah.
So the next question, this one we'll answer in the order Megan, Ruba, Ellen, Lena. So how would you make sure health, well-being and social care services are integrated, holistic, flexible and tailored for different diverse communities across Wales? So if we start this time with Megan.
Terribly sorry, I'm having some slight tech issues today, everyone. Could you just repeat the question for me, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem. How would you make sure health, well-being and social care services are integrated, holistic, flexible and tailored for all diverse communities across Wales?
So I think the first step to that is listening to communities. People understand their health needs better than an independent quango who are not involved in the community. And that requires investment in education. And as we've all said in the previous answer, it involves things like citizens' assemblies so that people are actually informing government as to how government best serves them and not the other way around. The Green Party also would engage in long-term investment to community organisations. Yes, sorry, that one's slightly gotten away from me there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ruba?
So the best way to ensure that those services are integrated, holistic and flexible to all communities is to ensure that there's no closed door policy, that it's an open door policy. So, you know, whenever somebody presents, you know, we have to have all our services working together so that people can be referred to, you know, the appropriate place. There is a pilot in young people's mental health services in Gwynedd, which is looking, which operates on that basis. So no child going to that to any of those services. So if you present to social care, to your GP, to whoever, you won't be turned away, and they will find the correct place for you to be, for you to receive those services that you need and require. And in the same way, that will be the way that services should operate. And, you know, and this is something that, you know, I've been around for quite a long time now, and these are issues that we've discussed for a very long time. And each time there are movements made towards, you know, integrating those services better. And I think, you know, we are moving in the right direction, but we do need to be tighter, and that involves you know, resources, making sure that all the professionals working in those services are, you know, trained properly to be able to signpost people, to move people on, or to assist people there. So, you know, the first step you know, is to ensure that we have the adequate resources and training for those professionals.
Thank you. Ellen?
Thank you, diolch. Okay, well, one of the first things that the Plaid Cymru government would do is to integrate health and social care services. We know that health and social care are inextricably linked, and having one seamless service instead of trying to just divide the two is arbitrary and needless. And we will do this. We will establish national frameworks to deliver all the aspects, make it seamless, and have new regional care partnerships, which will be bringing local government and health boards together so that they can consider the needs of populations in localities, which makes much more sense, and also, of course, increases engagement. I liked I think it was Megan who talked about listening. Yes, of course, we need to listen. Again, there's so many different levels at which we need to be intervening, and there's the government level of the regional care partnerships and the health and social care systems, integrated health and social care. But it's also about, I work for the health service. We have mandatory training. We should have mandatory training on all sorts of aspects of how we understand our clients' needs better in order to make sure that we respond to their needs in a holistic way and a flexible way. We need to consider the environments that we invite people into and make sure that the environments for social and healthcare are appropriate and respectful to people's diverse needs. I liked what you said, Ruba, about having an open door policy. Again, that's one of our pledges, is to have a mental health service for young people that's an open door, and people can just access it by just turning up without needing an appointment. Waiting for 2 years for an appointment for your mental health service is completely unacceptable. I'm aware that we have a very long way to go on this. And there's one other positive thing I wanted to say. In the new curriculum, I'm delighted that there's as a psychologist, that there's a new emphasis on mental health and well-being rather than necessarily, and of course academia is important, but we are trying to raise a generation of people who respect each other, who understand themselves and other people, and who are able to talk about things. So I'm glad about that emphasis. Yeah, we have a very long way to go. I'm aware, having worked on the Welsh Government's drive to create an equitable Welsh and English service in healthcare, that it's not where it needs to be. So I hope we learn from the examples of trying to develop Welsh and English services equitably, and build on that really to make it much more holistic and inclusive and integrated. Diolch. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And Lena.
Well, diolch yn fawr. So I think that we need to ensure that we are having parity in everything that we do within health, but also within social care. And I think that in recent years, that parity has fallen behind, shall we say, with due to a number of reasons. So the Welsh Dems want to ensure that all care workers are paid fairly by equalising that pay across the NHS and social care, to make sure that all care workers are paid the real living wage for the amazing work that they do. We also need to ensure that there is a developed plan to improve access to the wide range of counselling and therapies for those experiencing a number of issues such as trauma or complex grief. Something that we're doing in our current manifesto is taking a trauma approach to mental health and health coming out of this COVID time period. But it's also about having a right to healthcare, and not just having a mental health minister when things get bad, which is what the current government has chosen to do, but actually having one all the time, ensuring collaboration and partnership working across the government. We also want to set targets to end the need for out-of-area placements that see children sent far away from their friends and family to receive care in some parts of rural Wales. That's just absolutely unacceptable. We also need to streamline social care services and practices, working towards the creation of a single national care service with the integration of health and care in Wales, both. And just to touch on the more equality side of things, we need to ensure that health impact assessments are embedded within planning decisions within wider decision making, as well as to ensure the continuation of health and public health research, including the collaboration we have in our global community. We need to invest and support developments in technology to enable people to access health technologies in Welsh. That's something that I personally work on. In my background is in language technologies, and I've worked with the Betty Cadwaladr Health Board to ensure voice reconstruction in both languages. And we need to establish a task force to look at addressing health inequalities in Wales over a wide range of communities. We know, having looked recently, that the BAME community, which I form a part of, has been quite affected, but it doesn't stop there. We need to ensure that all of our communities can access health and social care in a way that works for them.
Thank you. So the next question is related, and we'll start with Ruba this time and go Ruba, Ellen, Lena, Megan. So how would you make sure mental health is an equal priority to physical health and meets the needs of all different diverse communities and people in Wales? So if we start with Ruba.
Thank you for the question. The last year, I think, has really shone a light on the way in which mental health services have been sort of not funded enough and not available enough, particularly to young people. I talked about the pilot in Gwent, which is applying this open door policy to young people so that they can, wherever they turn up, they won't be turned away, and they will, get the services that they require. Because for too long, and I think it is still the case, but I think there is change in people's perceptions of mental health, and the fact that it affects many more people than anyone believes, and it manifests itself in very many different ways. And young people in particular in this last year have been deeply affected by lockdowns and the consequences of COVID. So it's a very urgent matter, the mental health services. But I think, again, we are moving in the right direction. As Ellen mentioned, well-being and mental health are going to be a fundamental part of the school curriculum, and these are really, really important aspects of ensuring that people are educated around mental health, and also have the support to be able to function and get the help that they need. So you know, again, I think we're moving in the right direction. We haven't, it hasn't always been seen as, you know, a real, not so much a real, but it hasn't been seen in equal terms to physical health. But I think we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you. And Ellen?
Okay, sorry, I just realised that I've been going over time. I do apologise. Okay, let's think about mental health as similar to physical health. It's not an either or, it's a continuum. And so the responses that we need to have as a country to making sure that people have good mental health, very much like good physical health, range from quite drastic measures which need to be intensive and need to be absolutely funded and supported really well, to the other end of the spectrum, where it's not about severe mental health issues, it's about people's natural dipping in and out of feeling great and not feeling so great. And we can make so much difference to the way people feel, to people's well-being by other things. So not about CAMS, it's about tackling homelessness. It's about making sure that people have opportunities for leisure, that they live in good environments, that they live in green environments, that they can access green spaces, that there's a sense of community, that there are people that you can talk to. One of the things the pandemic has shown how much we're affected by social isolation and all the losses of all the soft things, you know, like the arts or going to see a film or just going out to hanging out with your mates. And everything was just shut down as if it wasn't important, but it's so important for our mental health to be able to access other people, to talk to other people, to have a hug from your friends. And social inequality is related to how people feel. And that's something we need to tackle as well, is social inequality. I'm a big supporter, as I know Megan will be as well, of UBI, Universal Basic Income, and that's a levelling up. And that will be good for people's mental health as well. I better stop. I'm sorry, I'm going over time again. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lena?
Thank you. Well, I have slightly mentioned mental health, but I'll mention a slightly different side of it. So I'm lucky enough to be in a party where we've always considered that mental health should be on par with physical health in the way that they are treated and the severity with which they are treated. I'm glad that that's now coming to the forefront. And we are looking to create a step change in our approach to mental health by increasing the share of funding to 13% of all the NHS spend by 2028, because it forms such a core part. And I'm glad that people are now seeing it. I did mention that we need to have a full-time mental health minister who works across the other ministerial roles to really put mental health not just at the core of this recovery, but the way that we move forward. Many people have mentioned mental health within the new curriculum, and I'm very, very glad to see that. And I'm extremely proud of the curriculum and the fact that it's passed. I think it'll be Kirsty Williams's legacy in many ways. I think that with mental health services, we need to ensure that people, like I said, we're taking a trauma approach to that because of everything that has happened. But it comes through in other policy areas which people have referred to. We need to ensure that people are properly housed, that housing is green and sustainable. We need to ensure that people have comfort in the way that they work. People have mentioned universal basic income, and that is something that myself and my party support. And that is, you know, we're supportive of a trial on that. It's about easing people's fears, and as well looking at the cultural stigmas which do still exist around mental health, and ensuring that the next Welsh Government is having a dialogue with everyone who is suffering from bad mental health. I know so many of us have, and ensuring that we recover in a way that is not just medically sound, but culturally sound and moves us forward in a positive light.
Thank you. And Megan? Megan, you're on mute.
mental and physical health and well-being are some of the most important issues of a society, and it's really reaffirming to hear from all three of you, and you basically touched upon several of the issues that I immediately was going to address. Ellen, universal basic income is essential. It gives people the ability to take some time off. If you aren't well, you shouldn't be forcing yourself to go into a work environment that could potentially make you much more unwell. You know, you look at some of the conditions in companies like Amazon, and they are not supporting people's mental well-being. So universal basic income would give people the breathing room to take time to take care of themselves. Obviously, housing, you know, having a warm, safe place to call home is integral. You cannot be well if you are living in housing uncertainty. And so, you know, that needs to be addressed. The other thing I would like to add is I think openness from representatives on mental health is incredibly important. I am very vocal about the fact that I'm a survivor of domestic violence and I've suffered quite badly with my mental health. And some people still consider that a detriment to myself as a political candidate. And no, I wouldn't be embarrassed if I broke my leg. Why would I ever be embarrassed that sometimes my mental well-being is not on par with the best level of physical health I could achieve? So yeah, I think it's important for candidates across the political spectrum to be honest and open about issues that we all face, but hiding it only forces it back down and makes people who might not be as secure as, oh, sorry, I've completely and utterly run over. Thank you.
So the next question, and if we start with Ellen on this and go Ellen, Lena, Megan, Ruba, what would you do to make sure public transport and local communities are accessible, safe, and inclusive of everyone? So if we start with Ellen.
Okay, diolch am y cwestiwn. Yes, I was quite shocked to hear that there was a blind lady speaking on the media recently about her experiences of how difficult it was to vote when you can't see. And it just hadn't occurred to me. And of course, the hoops that she had to go through in order to vote, it's completely unacceptable. So we need to be doing everything we can to make sure that people can engage, services, transport, communities are accessible in all the ways that we might not have thought of. And the only way to do that is to listen to people, have citizens' assemblies, and listen to specific people talking about specific issues. The blind lady wanting to vote, it's her right to vote. She's a human being. Of course she should be able to vote. Public transport, you know, it's awful that people are not able to, that people often have to plan and book their transport ahead of time. All our public transport should be completely accessible, whatever your diverse needs. I'll stop there. Diolch.
Thank you. Lena?
Diolch. Well, speaking to people who struggle taking a range of transport in Wales, it's become increasingly evident that it really just isn't accessible. And we have pledged to make public transport work for everyone and would implement a bus bill to ensure that bus routes meet community needs, accessibility needs, and that ticket fares are affordable and flexible to meet the timetabling difference and making sure that our bus stops as well as train stops not only connect in terms of scheduling, but are also accessible. We also have pledged to spend at least 10% of the transport budget on active travel, ensuring that local decision making is prioritises safer and accessible walking and cycling, as well as keeping that accessible. So looking to remove certain barriers that you could encounter on an active travel route so that people can access that with confidence. Many people don't have the confidence to be using these parts of our public services, and I think it's deplorable that that's still the case. And like Ellen, I did also see that piece, and I think it's horrendous that we're still having to talk about this in 2021. Things that we take for granted, many people just can't, and that's what my party and myself will be aiming to do. We'll be aiming to make Wales accessible, open and inclusive.
Thank you. And Megan?
Obviously, the Green Party are the party of public transport. You know, the less cars we have on the road, the cleaner our air is, the less our children develop breathing disorders like asthma. So that public transport needs to be fully comprehensive. The station, you know, the fact that disabled people have to book their travel so far in advance to access the basic privilege of getting on a train is obscene. We need stations across Wales, bus and train, to be adequately staffed at all times that service is running. And we need those staff to be trained in how to support people with disabilities, as they have every right to access public transport. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Ruba?
Well, again, you know, if we want a greener future, we need to invest in public transport. We need to make transport accessible to all people. One of the big issues for Wales is transport, because to connect the valleys with each other is a real issue, and it's an issue that we haven't always addressed in the past, but we are committed to addressing it now, because we need to we need to connect our communities, and it's essential for for a better economy, for a fairer society. So the Welsh Labour are committed to connecting those communities, and transport. And again, I worked in the disability sector for many years, and I'm still talking about accessible transport, accessible venues in the world, and that's still slightly disheartening that we're still at that stage. But again, it is a job in progress, and again, listening to our communities, we know lots of the barriers, and we just need, we need to put the resources into those, into removing those barriers for disabled people to access transport, but also to connect our communities where at the moment they're not connected, and that that does mean prioritizing that. And as a South Wales Central candidate, I am committed to making sure that places like Rhondda are connected with their neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll come to the final question now, and this one will answer Megan, Ruba, Ellen, Lena. So what would you do to make sure information and communication is accessible and inclusive of all communities and all the different diverse needs in Wales? So accessible and inclusive communication and information. So Megan.
As I mentioned in a previous answer, to me, the digital broadband revolution that Wales desperately needs would be my first priority. As internet access is becoming absolutely integral, and usable and fast internet access is becoming absolutely integral to a basic standard of living. You can't easily access information. You can't pay your bills with ease if you don't have access to a standard of broadband, to a certain standard of broadband. So in our smaller communities, that simply isn't happening, and that is part of the Green Party manifesto. We would have a digital revolution across Wales. So, yep, 10 seconds.
Thank you. And Ruba?
You know, as I said, I think in my opening, that this pandemic, you know, with all the heartache that it's involved, has allowed people to work differently. So, you know, we're having these hustings by Zoom, but we can have meetings by Zoom. We can work at home. We can work from wherever we want to. So I think, you know, that bus has left the station, if you like. There's no choice. There's no going back on this. We have to move forward, and you know, and we will move forward, because the people of Wales have had this time of working from home, and what they need is good broadband. What they need is good, you know, connection throughout Wales and with the rest of the world, because you know we are internationalists. So I think that's inevitable, and I think that has to move forward. We can't, that's irreversible now. So we then need to work to make it accessible and inclusive. And again, that does mean, you know, working with communities, with the disabled community, with the ethnic minority communities, around language, so that we are really inclusive and accessible. So, you know, that this train's going, and we've just got to make sure that it reaches everybody.
Thank you. Elin?
Diolch yn fawr. Well, as a Plaid Cymru candidate for Clwyd West, I'm painfully aware of the north-south divide here, and while Cardiff is busy having, this 5 business, senior moment, that vast areas of Clwyd West have extreme difficulties in accessing broadband. When I heard one of my constituents talk about having to drive to a lay-by to make sure that her child could download some schoolwork when in the middle of the pandemic, it's just horrific. We really, in the 21st century, we need a proper digital service so that everybody in the whole of Wales has equal access to broadband, wherever they live in Wales, wherever they live. But we also have an information deficit. Is, for example, on almost 40% of the people of Wales don't know that the Welsh Government is responsible for health. We need to make sure that our key public health messages get out to the whole of the population of Wales. So we need better, well-funded journalism, news, media, making sure that, and that we need to make sure that those issues are devolved, so that we have devolved broadcasting and telecommunications. So we're responsible for our own decisions, and we can roll out accessible and inclusive information to all the people who live in Wales.
Thank you. And Lena?
Well, I'm glad to hear so much about broadband connections, and here at the Welsh Lib Dems, we're coming at you with a plan. So we want to make it easier and quicker to install fibre optic broadband connections by changing planning rules and using latest methods to ensure the quickest installation and sort of minimal disruption. That's a conscious decision that we have made this election, because we've pledged to ensure in the next 5 years to have at least 90% of homes and businesses in Wales with full fibre access broadband, because it's key to everything we do. Someone's touched on this around the pandemic. Of course, it's core. I would love to see more virtual high streets, and that's something I'm very proud of in North Wales, watching businesses pop up online and make those smaller North Walian communities accessible to other people, and get people curious about what life is like outside of the Cardiff world that a couple of you are touching on. We need to invest in community-based training to make sure no one's left out on this, with a specific requirement to prioritise disabled people and people with learning disabilities. That's something that we're pledging to do, as well as investing in personal learning accounts to allow people to upskill and reskill while still keeping their data safe, as well as to maximise the use of public assets in getting all of this done with a focus on rural communities, and work with Wales-based suppliers to roll out connectivity solutions. And in terms of devolution, I think Ellen touched on this a little bit. Of course, we have to devolve broadcasting, but actually another one that really does need to be devolved is justice, because I am extremely worried about where our data goes. You know, because there are knock-on effects. For example, people seeking treatment without NHS here in Wales could have their data passed on to immigration services, which is currently reserved. And you know, could be at risk of being sent to God knows where. That's simply not acceptable for a Wales as being a nation of sanctuary. And we are the party that are going to change that.
Thank you to everyone who has taken part. Elin Walker-Jones, Plaid Cymru candidate for Clwyd West and third on the North Wales regional list. Lena Farhat, Welsh Liberal Democrat candidate for Clwyd South. Megan Lloyd, Wales Green Party first candidate on South Wales West regional list. And Ruba Sivinyanam, Welsh Labour candidate for South Wales Central. There is a separate video with Mia Rees, Conservative candidate for Cynon Valley and South Wales Central regional list. Thank you to everyone who is watching this video. Diverse Cymru has written a pledge for all candidates to sign up to. The pledge and the list of candidates who have signed up to it is on Diverse Cymru's website. We would urge all candidates from all parties anywhere in Wales to sign this pledge, and the list will be updated regularly on our website. We welcome organisations signing up to support Diverse Cymru's manifesto for a fair and equal Wales. Members of the public can ask your candidates if they have signed the pledge and what they will do to achieve a fair and equal Wales for all. And finally, don't forget to register to vote and to vote in the Senedd and Police and Crime Commissioner elections on Thursday, 6th of May. Thank you, everyone.